Is this on? I think it is. I can't remember. Uh, Sorry. Professor Scalar logs day 5, I think, maybe 6. I'm still lost in this labyrinth of endless fog and sleepers. My supply of fog repellers is almost completely depleted, and sadly, my ammunition isn't looking much better. I keep wandering around, hoping to find the way forward, but I always seem to end up back where I began. The drop lift won't pick me up here. I have to go deeper. I've been compiling notes on this place, though. Notes on how I managed to survive and deal with the alarms and the sleepers and such. I'm not sure if anyone else will find themselves in my situation, but if they do, I hope these notes reach them and help them escape from this dreadful place. So to those who may be listening, if there is anyone listening, let me share with you what I know. That way you might be able to succeed where I sadly could not. Hello everyone, Professor Scalar here, and welcome to my R7B2 level guide. Starting off as always, let's go over the recommended loadout. For this level, I recommend you bring with you a bio tracker, a mine deployer, and then either 2 burst sentries or 2 sniper sentries, or a combination of the two, so 1 burst and 1 sniper sentry. The reason I recommend the bio tracker is because in this level there's going to be a lot of fog, and if you go for the optional objective, there are also going to be shadow type enemies as well as a lot of darkness, as a power outage is going to occur and the rest of the level will be in pitch black darkness. So quite a few situations where it's going to be difficult to see where enemies are located, especially when you're trying to stealth through a zone. So having a bio tracker with you, that way you have a general idea of where they are located, and also being able to tag them if rooms wake up. That way, even if you don't have fog repellers, you have a chance to actually fight against them before they hit you, will definitely help out the team quite a bit. As for the mine deployer, I recommend this because there are a few blood doors throughout this level, there are some alarm doors, and there will be quite a few other situations where having some mines to help defend against the hordes of enemies coming after us will make things a whole lot easier us, and will make it so we don't have to consume nearly as much ammunition. And then finally, when it comes to the sentries, burst or sniper sentries work perfectly fine for this level. I've tested both. I find that sniper sentry works a little bit more effectively than the burst sentry, especially if you're a bio tracker tagging the enemy, since bio trackers will make sniper sentries a bit more effective, but burst sentries can work just as well. It's really up to you and your team and which one you want to take. If you want to let the sentries do more of the work, sniper sentry is going to be better, since they're just going to one-shot kill pretty much everything in this level except for some of the giant enemies. While the burst sentry sword does a little bit of 50-50 work, sentries will kill off some of them and weaken the rest of them, and then you just have to finish them off once they do arrive at you. So you could take one of each, 2 of the same kind, perfectly fine, it'll get you through this level, no issue whatsoever. Another thing too is if you are somebody who does not really like going through fog and trying to find enemies in the fog, or if you are going for the optional objective and you have to deal with the shadows, a good weapon that you could take with you would be the PDW. Normally I don't recommend specific weapons for levels, and also I think they help out quite a bit, but I do acknowledge the fact that the PDW is great for this level, as its thermal scope is able to see through the fog pretty easily, a lot more easily than precision rifle, which is the other thermal scope weapon, and it also allows you to see the outlines of shadow enemies. So if you don't want to be huddled up against the bio tracker person the entire level and just relying on them 24/7, you could bring a PDW with you, or if you don't mind not being able to see through the fog as easily, bring a precision rifle with you, and you should be good. Dropping down to the level, you'll see that your main objective is to find 2 specific terminals and create an uplink at both of them, and these 2 terminals will always be located inside the same 2 zones. The first one being in zone 124, and the second one being in zone 128, and you'll be starting off inside of zone 122. Inside zone 122, there will be some enemies, but there will never be any resources for you to collect. At the far eastern side of it, you'll be able to find a security door, and this security door is just an open security door that will take you to zone 123. Upon entering into zone 123 though, you'll notice that there is a very dense layer of fog beneath you, and that's sort of the general theme of this entire level. Some of it will be out in the open and you'll be able to see pretty easily, and in other areas there's going to be a lot of dense fog that's going to make it a whole lot harder for you and your team to safely traverse through it. So make sure in these situations you're either using fog repellers, which there will be plenty of them throughout the level, so keep an eye out for them as you want as many as you can get, or if you do not have fog repellers, take advantage of the bio tracker since they'll be able to see where the enemies are located generally anyway with the use of it. Or if you are bringing a PDW or a precision rifle, you can use it to more easily see through the fog and see the location of enemies. Inside the very first room of Zone 123 as well, you're going to be able to find security door to Zone 124, but this security door requires a key card, and that colored key card will be somewhere inside Zone 123. So go throughout the zone, collect resources, grab fog repellers, deal with the enemies, and once you get the key card, you can come back, put it into the security door, and upon doing so, you'll see that the security door has a Class 4 cluster alarm tied to it. So let's take a look at the map overlay. As you can see, enemies can spawn in 3 different locations. If they spawn to the west, there are no doors you can shut to block them as there is a room divider, so that location is 2 rooms away. But if they spawn to the east, they're going to have to break down a total of 2 doors to get to you no matter which one of the 2 spawns they come from. So I recommend that all the doors to the east you keep shut and then make sure you mind the 1 door that leads into your room. And as for your 2 sentries, I would recommend that you place them facing out towards that open security door. That way, if enemies do come from that direction, they'll have to go through the line of fire of both of your sentries before they can actually step foot into your room. Once you have everything set up, you can throw a few fog repellers throughout the room, that way you can more easily see, activate the door, and then get to work on the scans. Do be aware that one of the scans will often go up next to that security door, so if you do have your sentries up there, try not to place them too far back. That way when you have to go up for that scan, you're not stepping right in front of them and you don't get shot by them, as one shot from a sniper sentry is going to do a lot of damage to you. But focus on the scans, biotracker, tag the enemies, that way your team knows exactly where they are. And once you finish all the scans, deal with the rest of the enemies. Once they're all dead, pick up your sentries and any leftover mines that might still be there. Then you can go back to the security door, open it up, and head into Zone 124. Inside of Zone 124, you'll be able to find the first uplink terminal that you need for your main objective, as well as a fair amount of enemies and some resources. So go throughout the entire zone, clear all the enemies, pick up all the resources you can get, and then once you're done with that, you can start setting up defenses for the uplink itself. As you can see with the map overlay, enemies can spawn from 3 different locations, 2 of those being to the south and 1 being to the west. When it comes to the doors, you're going to want to make sure that both of these doors are shut and mined, 1 mine each, and you should be good. And you're going to want to make sure that this door right here next to the person on the uplink terminal is kept shut. You do not need to mine this door as enemies will never take it. You just need to make sure it's closed, that way enemies do not route through it and go for the person on the terminal. As for these 2 doors right here, you're either going to want to leave both of them open, or you're going to want to close both of them and then place a mine on this door to defend for you. And this will change depending on if you are going to be going into Zone 129 or not. For those who don't know, to the west, there is a security door to 129, which has a Class 4 alarm tied to it. But that zone is not a requirement to complete the level. There's just a ton of resources and enemies located inside of it. So if you plan on going into the optional resource zone, you need to keep the 2 doors open, that way you can use them for the alarm door to make that bit easier. But if you don't plan on going into the optional resource zone, and you just continue with the main objective after you finish the uplink, you can keep the 2 doors shut since you won't have to use them later, as the other security door found to the west, the one to Zone 126, is just a checkpoint scan, no alarm tied to it. As for your teammates and your sentries, you're just going to want to defend a little bit south of the person who's on the terminal, because from there you can see enemies no matter which direction they come from, the west or from the south. Sentries will have clear line of fire on both directions as well. So once your defenses are set up and you're good to go, do the full team scan tied to the uplink terminal, get into your positions, deal with the uplinks. Once all the codes are in, deal with any enemies are still left alive. And once all the enemies are dead, you can pick up your sentries, pick up any mines that might not have been triggered, and then you can continue on with the main objective. Upon finishing the first uplink terminal, the security door to Zone 125, which will be in the room with you, will unlock and you'll gain access to it, which is important because inside Zone 125, there will be a colored key card that we need in order to continue on with the rest of the main objective. However, the security door is a blood door, so we're going to want to place a mine on the door, open it up, fall back, let the mine deal with most of the enemies, and then you just simply act as the cleanup crew who just finishes any enemies are still left alive. Once they're all dead, you can head into the zone, look around, there'll be some enemies, there'll be resources, as well as that colored keycard inside Zone 125 that you need. So once you get the resources and the keycard, head back out, go to the security door to Zone 126, which is found at the far western side of Zone 124, and you can plug that keycard in. And this will give you access to the checkpoint scan that is tied to the door. But before you do the checkpoint scan, you are going to want to head into Zone 129 if your team is planning on doing it and you haven't already. Because if you plan on going in there but you do the checkpoint scan, the security door to 126 will automatically open up and this opens up a new spawn location for you, and you don't really want that. So if you do plan on going in there, you're going to want to set up some defenses first. So let's take a look at the map overlay. As you can see, enemies can only spawn in one location, and from that location, they're going to have to go through one of two doors and then go through one central door to get into your room. So I recommend you make sure all three of those doors are shut, and then you mine this door right here. And if you have happened to find a C4 grenade up to this point, you can use it on the door to buy your team extra time. As for your sentries, you could just simply place them in the room with you somewhere facing towards the direction of that door, and you should be good. Overall, as long as you preserve these doors and they didn't get busted down during the uplink terminal, you should have a pretty easy time with this alarm, as it is only class 4, and the enemies do spawn pretty far away from you. But once you finish all the scans and all the enemies are dead, you can pack up your sentries and then head to zone 129 itself. Be a little bit careful in here. There are a pretty fair amount of enemies, and these are small rooms, so you could get bad RNG and have about 7 or 8 enemies in a very tiny room. And this also includes giant strikers or giant shooters potentially. In this zone, there are usually around 4 uses of tool refill, 6 uses of ammunition, and 8 uses of medipacks. So if you can successfully stealth your way through this zone, or at least deal with the enemies without wasting too much ammunition or getting backhanded by them and losing health, you should come out with a pretty nice net profit. But once you finish up with this zone and you got everything you need, you can then head to the security door zone 126, finish the checkpoint scan, and then the door will automatically open up and you can head into the zone itself. Inside of zone 126, you'll be able to find your first bulkhead key, your bulkhead door control, as well as the bulkhead doors to your main and secondary objectives. Which means it's now time to split the group up a little bit, because if you're somebody who is only interested in the main objective portion of this video and you do not care to see anything about the secondary, jump to the timestamp that is on screen. Here we will continue on with zone 127 and how to get to the second uplink terminal and then get to the forward extraction point and finish the level. But if you're somebody who wants that secondary completion, you're going to want to continue watching, as we are going to be talking about that right here, right now. So for those of you who are interested in that, you're going to do the full team scan for the secondary objective. This is going to make a marker appear above the bulkhead door to zone 253, which is now unlocked. You're going to want to go down there and then just open it up. No alarm or scan tied to the door whatsoever. However, after you open up the bulkhead door, a blackout is going to occur and the lights throughout the entire level are going to go out. Although this is temporary, they will come back on in about 5, 10, or 15 seconds, something like that. I've never really timed it because it's honestly not that important. But upon entering into zone 253, you'll see that your secondary objective is to collect 4 GLP canisters. And these canisters will be spread throughout zone 253, 254, and 255. Inside zone 253, there are going to be enemies, resources, a GLP canister for you to collect, as well as a fair amount of fog. So if you don't already have fog repels on you, you're either going to want to go back or look inside the zone to find more, as there can be giant strikers somewhere in this zone, and the last thing you want is to have them spawn down in the fog and then just blindly walk into them. So be a little bit careful when you're going through the foggy portions of the zone. When you get to the back end of it though, you'll go up above out of the fog and you'll be able to find a security door to zone 254. This one having a class 3 alarm tied to it. So let's take a look at the map overlay. As you can see with the map overlay, enemies can only possibly spawn in one location, and this right here is the only door that they could potentially go through to get to you and your team. So make sure that door is shut and mined. Although you may notice something's a bit weird. The icon for the enemies on this map overlay is different. This isn't what it was like in the previous one, so what gives? Well, that's because these enemy icons will show you generally what type of enemies to expect. And you're not going to be fighting regular strikers and shooters during this alarm. You're going to be fighting shadow type enemies. Shadows will not be shot at by your sentries unless if you tag them with the biotracker. Biotracker pings on shadows do not last for nearly as long as they do regular enemies. So you're going to want to make sure that during this alarm, you have the sentries a little bit closer to you. That way, once the shadows get within biotracker distance, you can tag them and your sentries actually have decent time to shoot at them. So don't place them way too far away, otherwise your sentries will be next to useless. And to make things worse, shortly after you activate this alarm door, a permanent blackout is going to occur, which means for the rest of the level, including the rest of the main objective, you have no lights. Everything is pitch black darkness, which in some ways is a blessing and a curse, because fighting shadows in pitch black darkness is actually a little bit easier in my opinion than fighting them in a well-lit room. But if you're brand new to the game, obviously this is going to be a challenge. So finish the scans, deal with the shadows, biotrack person, make sure you're tagging them once they get close to you. If you have thermal scope weapons, you will be able to more easily see them. And once they're all dead and all the scans are finished, you can go back, pick up your sentries, and then open up the security door to zone 254. Inside zone 254, there will be a fair amount of small as well as giant enemies like giant strikers and or giant shooters. And this is a little bit problematic because there is a security door to zone 255 in the zone which has an alarm tied to it, which means you cannot stealth past these giants and you have to deal with them. And in some situations, you might be able to stealth kill every single one of them because no 2 enemies are that close to each other. But in some other situations, you might have 2, 3, or even 4 giants that are all right on top of each other, making it that going for a stealth kill is next to impossible. And in these situations, I recommend you just stealth kill every other enemy in the room that you can that is isolated, and then just have everybody go behind a different giant striker and or giant shooter, and then just do a countdown. 3, 2, 1, shoot. Everybody mag dump their special weapon into the backs of the giants, because shooting an enemy from behind, or I guess specifically giant strikers from behind, will give you a 2x damage multiplier, which means that you will be consuming half as much ammunition if you were to try to shoot them from the front by just simply pulling the room and falling back and letting them come to you. But once you clear all the enemies, you've collected the GLP or GLPs that spawn in here and the resources, you can head to the security door to zone 255 and then set up defenses for it, because it is going to be a class 5 alarm. As you can see with the map overlay, there are two different locations enemies can spawn from, the southeast as well as the west. If they go from the southeast, they're going to go through the open security door and then through this door right here, assuming both doors to the east are kept shut. So I recommend you just simply mine that door and then have one or maybe even both of your sentries on the inside of the room with you facing towards that door. As for the west, there are two doors you have to go through, so I would recommend that you shut and mine both of them and then don't have any sentries facing towards it, and you should be good. A thing to keep note of though during this alarm is that it's going to alternate scans. The first one's going to be a full team scan, then it's going to be red scans, then another full team, then another red set, and then another full team scan. So your team needs to stick together and you need to stay alive throughout this alarm. That way you can deal with all the scans as fast and efficiently as you can. But you gotta be careful, because just like the security door to zone 254 itself and that alarm, every single enemy that spawns in during this alarm is either going to be a regular Shadow Striker or very rarely even a giant Shadow Striker. But once you finish all the scans and all the enemies are dealt with, pick up your sentries, any mines that might not have gone off, and then you can head into zone 255 itself. Be careful though when you're going into zone 255, because inside of here there will be nothing but sleeping Shadow Strikers. So go throughout here, be careful, use thermal weapons, use the bio tracker, deal with them stealthily one by one or just simply sneak past them, collect the resources, collect the last few GLPs you need, and also collect the second bulkhead key that will always be inside zone 255 somewhere. With all of that in your possession, you have completed the optional objective for R7B2, which means you can now backtrack all the way to zone 126, and we can meet up with the other people who are only doing just the main objective. Okay, so we're all back together once again, and now we can continue on with the rest of the main objective and make our way to that second uplink terminal. Starting off, we have to go through the security door to zone 127, which is going to be a blood door, so place 1 or 2 mines on this door, and then open it up and fall back. There might be a lot of enemies that are naturally sleeping in that room before the blood door, or there might not be that many. You could check this with the bio tracker, and this will determine on how many enemies will actually get killed. Aside from the blood door though, there's not really anything I need to take note of 127. There are some enemies, some resources like always, but nothing else too important. So let's jump to the back end of it, where we'll find the security door to zone 128, which is going to have a class 5 alarm tied to it. As you can see with the map overlay for this alarm door, enemies can spawn from 2 different locations, and they have a few doors they have to go through to get to us. Each room has its own unique door, and then there's the one central door that leads into our room. So what I recommend you do is you shut and mine all 3 doors, and then either you're going to want to have the 2 sentries in the room with you facing towards the door, so it shoots at enemies after they break them down and get in, or you're going to want to place your 2 sentries out in that other room in the hallway portion next to each other, one facing towards the west and one facing towards the east. You might think this is a little bit weird because I've stated before you don't really want to put sentries on the outside of a door that's been mined, but this is actually to help us out a little bit and potentially give us even more time before the enemies get to the door. See, those 2 doors outside are both small doors, which means that not all the enemies are going to be able to pile up against it and be there when the door breaks down. So the mines aren't guaranteed to kill every single one of the enemies, sort of like they are when it's a big, wide door. So we want to have the sentries out there, that way when the doors get broken down, about maybe 80 to 90% of the enemies die to the mine, and then the last few enemies have to go through the line of fire of the sentry before they get to that big central door. Which means there's a chance that the sentry will pick off the rest of the enemies, which buys that bigger door even more time because enemies are going to take longer to actually get to it and start breaking it down. This works a lot more efficiently if you're running double sniper sentry instead of burst sentries, but even then it is not a guarantee, so it's more of a risk versus reward thing. Also be aware that during this alarm, every single scan is a full team scan, and these full team scans take longer than they typically do with other doors, so this is another reason why we want to buy more time. And these scans can go down into the fog, so make sure you have some fog repellers with you. But once you finish all the scans and all the enemies are dead, you can go back, pick up your sentries, and then head over to the security door and activate the checkpoint scan that's tied to it. Once you finish the scan, the door will automatically open up, and you can head into zone 128. Inside of zone 128, you'll be able to find the second uplink terminal that you need for your main objective. However, in the zone, there are actually 2 different terminal locations. And while both terminals will always be present, only one of those 2 is going to actually be the uplink terminal, and this can change from run to run. So you're going to want to go throughout the entire zone, clear out every single room, collect the resources, and just be careful since most of the zone is covered in fog and a lot of the doors in the zone are incredibly or potentially are incredibly valuable for the upcoming uplink. And then once you dealt with all that, go to the 2 terminals and figure out which one of the 2 is the uplink terminal that you need. Once you know, you can start setting up defenses. Speaking of which, let's actually look at some map overlays because the defenses for the 2 terminals are incredibly different. As you can see with this map overlay, this is probably the simplest and easy one, or the easier one of the 2 uplinks, because enemies can only spawn in one room, and there's only one door they have to break down to get into your room, because there is an open room divider inside the room that you'll be in. So really all you have to do is just mine and shut the door here, and then have your 2 sentries on the inside of the room facing towards that door. That way, once the door breaks open, the sentries will start shooting at them. And heck, if you want to make it even easier, the 3 teammates who aren't dealing with the uplink terminal, once you finish a full team scan, can actually go near that door, because in doing so, you go beyond the room divider, which actually forces the enemies to spawn one room further back, which means they'll spawn like this, which means these 2 doors right here actually can be shut and mined and taken advantage of. So in a way, you actually have 3 potential doors you can use during this uplink, making things pretty easy for you and your team to deal with. However, if you get the other uplink terminal, well, as you can see, things are a little bit more complicated because I think there's 6 different locations enemies can spawn from and 8 different doors they could potentially go through to get into your room, which means that you can have many different ways to set up for this defense. With the map overlay, I believe I'm going to have every single door shut or mined, but obviously you might not be able to mine literally every single one of these doors because maybe you've been putting too much tool refill into the sentries, or maybe just too many mistakes in the level and you just don't have the tool refill to sustain it. If you're playing super efficiently, you definitely will, and you can mine and shut every single one of these doors, but obviously I have to account that that's not every single group out there. So if that is the case, what I recommend you do is take advantage of the fact that you have mines and 2 sentries. What you could do is maybe have one of your sentries facing towards the south and leave the door open, and then the other sentry facing towards the east and then leave that door open, and then just simply mine the doors to the north. That way if enemies come from that direction, they have to go through the mines. That, or maybe do a little bit of combination of both. Have mines in all 3 directions and then have sentries facing out 2 of the doors, or maybe on the outside of the room facing towards the direction they come from. That way if enemies come from those directions, they get shot at by those sentries and they don't get to the door nearly as easily. There are a lot of different ways that you can set this up depending on what your tool refill situation is looking like, so I'm not going to try to give you a one definitive way to do it. Just be aware that this is a very small room you're in, and you're also in the middle of a lot of dense fog, so you need to throw fog repellers everywhere, and you need to be very aware of where the enemies are coming from, because if they sneak up on the person on the terminal, they're going to take a lot of damage. And also be careful because you might accidentally shoot each other when trying to shoot the enemies. But once you finish the uplink terminal and the rest of the enemies are taken care of, pick up any mines that might be left over, grab your sentries, and then head to the far eastern side of the zone where you find the security door to zone 130, which will now automatically be unlocked because you finished the uplink terminal. The security door is just an open one, so no alarm or a scan tied to it whatsoever. Inside zone 130 though, you want to be a little bit careful because this is a big open circular room, and in here there will always be 3 scouts but no other enemies, which can either be really easy or difficult to deal with. If your team has somebody who's confident in dealing with scouts with melee, you got no problem. Run around, bonk the 3 scouts, get rid of them, and then you can go and collect any resources you can find in here. At the far end of it, you'll also be able to find security door to zone 131, which is where your extraction scan will be. However, that security door is under lockdown and requires you to find the terminal in the room somewhere and then put a command into said terminal. This isn't really too hard though. The terminal is a little bit north of where the security door is. It's down below in the fog. Doing this command will just simply unlock the door. There will be no full team scan. There won't be an alarm or anything, so you just put it in right away. And then you go over to the security door 131 and open it up, as there's no scan or alarm tied to that one either. However, you need to be a little bit careful because inside of the extraction room, inside zone 131, there are going to be a lot of sleeping enemies, sleeping giant strikers, regular strikers, and shooters. So you don't want to just simply run in. If you have a lot of health, ammunition, tool refill, you could just plop down your sentries and start shooting at enemies and let them come to you. Or if you want to do a little bit of a stealthy route, you could just simply sneak past all the enemies and hop into the extraction scan, because even though it is a slow scan, it is a silent one. No alarm's going to initiate, no enemies are going to wake up or come after you. So if you want to, you can stealth one person, get on the scan, and just stay perfectly still and just wait for it to get 100%. But no matter which method you use, once you get to that extraction scan and you get that to 100%, you are done and you have finally beaten R7B2. And that's all there really is to it. R7B2 is one heck of a foggy level that I believe was meant to show newer players the stress and difficulty of stealthing through zones with enemies that you have a pretty hard time locating. While no particular moment in this level is over the top in difficulty, the level itself is fairly long and will test your endurance and also a little bit of your resource managing skills. Throw in the secondary objective and you also need to deal with darkness and even some shadow enemies, which I think is a nice way to keep a B tier level simple while also keeping players sort of on their toes. A nice little challenge or balance of simple and easy, but also difficult so people who are a bit more advanced at the game aren't completely bored with the level. As always though, thank you for watching this video all the way to the very end. I do hope that it was able to provide you with some assistance in beating this level. If you have any tips or tricks for this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you want to say, please let me know down in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and if you want to join the community I'm building, there's a link to my Discord down in the description, as well as some other cool links which I highly recommend you check out, especially the link that will take you to the official GTFO merch store, which I believe is now officially back online. So if you are a fellow GTFO enthusiast and you want to get some cool looking merch, check it out. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Or at least, I hope you aren't. Maybe I should not promise that to random people who I've never met before. Either way though, until next time, good luck exploring further down into the complex. Hopefully the fog wasn't too big of an issue for you in this level, because if it was, oh boy, you're gonna hate the next level a lot. And I will see you all in the next video.